Has this affected you guys financially? Has it hurt your life financially?
I mean, as vice president of Daystar, I had a really hefty salary.
Just that year of 23, right? Oh no, of 22. Is that when you got that big bump? Before that, we were always normal.
For 2023.
It was never.
I mean, it was still a nice.
No, yeah, no, but it was like massive in 2022.
Full-time vice president for a whole year.
We were shook. We were like, whoa.
People want to act like you have this huge nest egg that they just put away for y'all, and you're just set for.
Considering the recent events at Daystar TV, it's clear that finding peace of mind is essential for those involved. Jonathan and Susie's choice to seek total freedom highlights the importance of personal well-being.
You are a forerunner in what God is doing in the new generation of leaders in the body of Christ, which is not about the money and the fame, because you gave up the money and the fame. I don't want to dig, but there's a big old narrative out there. Oh, they're multimillionaires. They work for this multi-million-dollar ministry. Has this affected you guys financially? Has it hurt your life financially?
I mean, as vice president of Daystar, I had a really hefty salary.
Just that year of 23, right? Oh no, of 22. Is that when you got that big bump? Before that, we were always normal.
For 2023.
It was never.
I mean, it was still a nice.
No, yeah, no, but it was like massive in 2022.
Full-time vice president for a whole year.
We were shook. We were like, whoa.
People want to act like you have this huge nest egg that they just put away for y'all, and you're just set for life.
Y'all have like millions in the bank or something.
No.
But you could be forced to sell your house to get by at this point. It's not like you're just set up for life.
Right, exactly.
No, we're still paying a mortgage.
Yeah, still have the bills that are coming in from living a lifestyle that was with a larger set of income. I mean, both of us.
I had got a bump too in 22 because he became vice president. Before that, I was much less than the rest of the family.
Right.
When we got married, a few years in, we bought a $200,000 house. We lived in that house for 8 years. We had a very, very normal income. It wasn't big and it wasn't less, but it was very, very mediocre. Totally okay. For many years, I was making less than a Starbucks employee. And it was totally okay because I was mostly mom. And so it was fair. So it's not like we have some big nest egg or anything.
Welcome back, faithful viewers, truth seekers, and lovers of God's work. Let's dive straight into it. In this honest and surprising interview, Jonathan Lamb and his wife Susie sat down and opened up about their finances, their choices, and what life has been like after walking away from Daystar. Many people assumed they were living large, sitting on millions. But what they shared may shock you. The interview began with a striking line. You gave up the money. You gave up the fame. That hit hard because so many assumed Jonathan and Susie were living comfortably for life. But the truth was far more grounded. Jonathan admitted that back in 2022, he received a salary bump while serving as vice president at Daystar. But that increase lasted just 1 year. Before that, they lived a very average lifestyle. Susie even revealed she made less than a Starbucks barista while being a full-time mom. They weren't complaining, they were just being real. For 8 years, they lived in a $200,000 home. Not a mansion, not a compound, just a regular home for a regular family. And now, after leaving Daystar, they're not set for life. They still have a mortgage and bills, just like the rest of us. The interviewer even said they might have to sell their home if things don't turn around. This goes to show how quick we are to judge based on appearances. People think if you're connected to a big ministry like Daystar, you're automatically rich. But this interview peeled back the curtain. Jonathan and Susie didn't walk away from just a job. They walked away from comfort, stability, and a future that was laid out for them. And they did it for their conscience, for their faith, because they believed it was the right thing to do. What stood out most wasn't just the talk about money, it was their honesty. They weren't trying to impress anyone. They didn't sugarcoat anything. They just told the truth. And in today's world, that's rare. Jonathan and Susie showed us that not everyone in ministry is in it for fame or wealth. Some are in it for faith, for purpose, for truth. And when they saw a path they didn't agree with, they chose to step away, even if it meant hardship. So no, they're not living in luxury. They're living a story of sacrifice and real faith. And whether you agree with their decision or not, you have to respect the courage it took to walk away from it all. That's a powerful message and one we all can learn from.
That's why when everything actually came to head, when we got in 22 after he passed and I got a really nice salary and Jonathan too, you would think that would be the time to be tempted to stay, if anything. But that was the time we were more ready than ever. I mean, it was the wrestle and breaking of me begging God, when will Jonathan be ready? So I'm ready to sell this house. I'm ready for a new beginning. We have 50 states to choose from.
We lay everything on the altar for the truth. If we had simply gone along with the charade, put aside our convictions, read the card, praised my mom's marriage, and continued to not question anything about Pete, we would have had everything that my father had said. I would be the next president after my mother either retired or passed away. That was in writing.
Sometimes the biggest decisions in life aren't about choosing between what's good and bad, but between what's easy and what's right. And that's exactly what Jonathan and Susie Lamb talked about in this heartfelt and revealing podcast interview. What they shared wasn't just emotional, it was incredibly real, raw, and convicting. Let's start with Susie. Her words cut deep because they came from a place of honest reflection and spiritual clarity. She opened up about what 2022 looked like for them, especially after the death of Jonathan's father. For many families, that kind of loss often brings people closer and anchors them in what they know. And for Jonathan and Susie, that anchor came with a level of comfort and financial stability they'd never had before. Jonathan had stepped into the role of vice president at Daystar, and Susie herself received a good salary. On paper, everything looked perfect, but beneath the surface, something was stirring. While most people would see that moment as the ideal time to stay, to settle in and enjoy the fruits of their labor, Susie felt the complete opposite. Her spirit was restless. She told God she was ready to leave, even if it meant letting go of their home and starting over from scratch. That kind of honesty is rare. She wasn't trying to run away. She was trying to live with integrity. She felt like God was calling her to more than just comfort. He was calling her to be real, to be obedient, and to trust him with the unknown. That's not just faith. That's bold, radical surrender. Then came Jonathan's turn. And he didn't hold back either. He shared that they had the freedom to move anywhere in the country. They looked at all 50 states. That's how seriously they took this decision. They were ready to let go of their roles, their title, their platform, their income, everything. Jonathan said something powerful. We laid everything on the altar for the truth. And that's exactly what they did. He explained that if they had stayed quiet, supported things they didn't agree with, and just smiled through it all, he would have been guaranteed the presidency of Daystar. That leadership role, that legacy, that paycheck, it was all right there. Waiting for him, it was in writing. But they chose to walk away, not because they were forced to, not because they were removed, but because they couldn't go along with something they didn't believe in. For Jonathan and Susie, the issue wasn't just about a title or a paycheck. It was about conscience. It was about walking in truth, even if it meant walking away from what the world calls success. They chose conviction over convenience and purpose over popularity. That's the kind of decision that very few people make. Jonathan talked about the internal battle they faced. He knew what staying would mean, but staying would also mean compromising their values, and they weren't willing to do that. Even if it meant starting over, facing financial uncertainty, and walking away from a built-in future, they chose the hard road. Because for them, honoring God and living honestly mattered more. And let's be clear, this decision cost them. They admitted that they're not set for life. They still have a mortgage. They still have bills. In fact, the interviewer even mentioned that they might need to sell their home if things don't change. That's how real this decision was. It wasn't symbolic. It was practical. It was life-altering. And through all of it, what stood out was their peace. Not a superficial peace, but a deep, lasting peace that only comes from obedience to God. You could hear it in their voices. You could see it in their words. They weren't bitter. They weren't angry. They were grateful. They knew they had made the right choice. That's what makes this podcast so powerful. It's not just about a family leaving a ministry. It's about a family choosing God over everything else. Choosing truth when lies would have been easier. Choosing to trust God's plan when their own plans seem so secure. And maybe that's a message we all need to hear. Maybe this isn't just Jonathan and Susie's story. Maybe it's a reminder to us all that following Jesus isn't always about elevation and open doors. Sometimes it's about surrender and closed chapters. And in those moments, we have to ask ourselves, are we willing to walk away from what the world offers to hold on to what God requires? Because here's the truth. Doing the right thing won't always make you rich. It won't always make you popular, but it will make you faithful. It will make you strong, and it will give you peace that no amount of money or platform can ever provide. Jonathan and Susie Lamb are living proof of that. They laid it all down, not for applause, not for attention, but for truth. And that kind of faith, that's what we should be celebrating. That's the real win.